Hello, my name is Mark Iskowitz, and I'm Editor-in-Chief of MM&M, and I want to welcome you to today's webcast entitled A Window into the Physician's Perceptions of Drugs. Data based on real-world experiences is one of the fastest developing forms of research in healthcare marketing today, and data that's user-generated by physicians about drugs is one of the newest forms. I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's webcast, SERMO, which recently launched what it says is the first and only global peer-to-peer drug review system provided exclusively from verified physicians. Pharma brand managers can now see what hundreds of thousands of ratings say about their drugs in order to gauge the physician perception of drugs in terms of safety, efficacy, and more. Joining me today are the CEO of SERMO and the Vice President in charge of commercializing this new drug ratings tool. I'll introduce them in a moment. First, a few housekeeping items. This is a 1-hour webcast, and following the presentation, there'll be a Q&A. So submit those questions through the webcast system, and we'll do our best to have our guests answer them. Okay, I'll now introduce our speakers. First, we have Peter Kirk. Peter is CEO of SERMO, and since launching the company in 2000, Peter has grown the organization into an enterprise with over 200 employees in 8 global offices and a global network of close to 2 million healthcare professionals. He holds a master's in finance from London Business School. Joining Peter, it's my pleasure to also welcome J.R. Herman. He joined SERMO in 2017 as Vice President with a focus on leading the commercialization of drug ratings. He brings over 20 years' experience building and leading teams across commercial life sciences. This includes field-based sales and training roles at Johnson & Johnson, and over 10 years with IMS Health, driving growth with global key accounts. And J.R. holds an MBA from the Kelley School at Indiana University. Welcome, gentlemen, and I'll now hand things over to Peter.
Mark, thank you very much for the intro, and thank you, MM&M, for hosting us, and thank you everyone else out there for joining, hoping you have either already digested your lunches or you will be having a little snack while we are talking here. I look very much forward to our session. Look forward to hearing your thoughts and questions afterwards, so please don't be shy when we get that far. Before we launch straight into drug ratings itself, I just want to spend 5, max 8 minutes just talking about why drug ratings even is possible, and that is because of how doctors view our platform, SERMO, as a place for them. So a quick review into what SERMO really is and why it's important for doctors, and then we will spend the remainder of the time drilling into drug ratings and why it should be important for industry and ad agencies, consultants, and whatnot. So SERMO, just as a reminder, is exclusively for verified licensed physicians only. So there's no other HCPs in there. There's no otherwise stakeholders except from verified licensed physicians. Today, as we've been globalizing SERMO since 2014, we are now the one global doctors, as you probably know, we have a vision at SERMO that we don't just take seriously. As a matter of fact, we let it guide us in almost everything we do, to the point where I'm proud to say that we are increasingly a mission-based company. Now, mission is to revolutionize. As I know, it's a big word. It took me a while, frankly, to get comfortable and really understanding how we could actually do that. We've revolutionized real-world medicine by connecting doctors online to the shared wisdom and support from both locally and globally across borders and geographies. So as some of you guys may know, SERMO was originally founded up in Cambridge in Boston by doctors for doctors, and in 2012, we merged it with a market research company, one that I had founded in London. Then in 2015, we relaunched and rebranded the combined entity to SERMO, today, and have been very busy globalizing it. So at this point, SERMO is available to licensed verified physicians in 150 countries, and we're now counting over 800,000 members. We just, a couple of weeks ago, launched into India and Russia, which we are very excited about. And before the end of Q1, we will have gone into China, Japan, and the rest of Asia, so that SERMO truly is global for doctors. Now, industry, pharma often asks us, who is a SERMO doctor, right? And like we like to say, they're all great-looking guys like Dr. House here. But really, the real answer is your average doctor, right? So I think it becomes the law of large numbers. Median age of our members are mid-40s. They're mostly predominantly male. 70% of specialists with over 15 years of practice, right? Little over half of the activity takes place via mobile. So a couple of times in the press, we have been fortunate enough to be called the Facebook for doctors, which is very flattering, and we of course love it. Our own tagline, as you know, is #1 global social network for doctors. But if you speak to doctors, it probably isn't the words they will use. They would probably say something more akin to like, well, it's like going to a medical conference and connecting with your peers, or, well, it's like a really large doctor's lounge in the cloud. So once we take the fancy words away, what do doctors really do on SERMO? And they basically do 4 core activities. They talk and connect with one another. They earn money via surveys. They solve difficult patient cases via medical crowdsourcing. And as of recently, they are rating drugs. Another way you can think about these 4 quadrants through time is to say the original SERMO founded in Boston was really a doctor's lounge where doctors could connect and confide with one another in confidence and feel safe about it. What I have started in London was the market research endeavor, right, allowing doctors to earn money via surveys. Then we merged these 2 quadrants, and then we've been, since then, internationalizing and adding new, more clinical parts to SERMO that is totally in line with our mission of improving outcomes around the world by really doctors helping each other, doctors sharing the medical knowledge. Another way to think about it is to say that we are formalizing tribal knowledge, right? Doctors have so much fantastic knowledge in all these corners of the world, but they're normally quiet about it. They speak quietly to their peers down the hallway, quietly at a conference, quietly they're working through all these things in their minds. So we are helping them surface that in a structured way via medical crowdsourcing, organically, or help nail the diagnosis for patient cases, or via drug ratings. So we take a quick spin into each of these things. And doctors talk and connect, it is really their space. We don't control them, you don't control them, nor should we try to. This is an important part about SERMO, is where the secret sauce starts. Doc, it is their space. They don't see me, they don't see you guys, they don't see industry, right? It is their space. And I see it's one of the most important tasks for me as CEO of SERMO. It really is to keep that sacred and keep promoting it as it is basically by doctors for doctors. And it helps with respect for you. Last year, our members logged on a little over 3 million times, started over 39,000 conversations, and commented more than 600,000 times. And right in line with the mission, they helped solve over 7,000 real-world challenging patient cases. In aggregate, we now have over 5 million peer-to-peer comments stemming from over 250,000 physician-originated conversations. So while that 5 million is tiny compared to what consumers say on Twitter or on Facebook, it is massive when it comes to peer-to-peer conversations. And we see that time and again when we work with social media listening companies, how they have a very hard time finding much in terms of anything of doctors talking out in the open, a wide net, and when they do, they tend to be sort of shy about what the true opinions are, whereas when we end up sharing information, anonymized of course, it tends to be much richer and much larger data sets they can find elsewhere. So going back to what is so special about SERMO? I mean, number one, it's licensed, verified doctors only. Number two, it is in a closed environment so they can feel safe in expressing themselves. Number three, we allow them to be anonymous to one another so they can also feel at ease and relaxed about asking questions or participating without having to feel like, am I outing myself? This is a silly question. Should I have known that? Am I now going to be liable for something? So those are really key to the secret sauce of why doctors actually go on SERMO and share their real thoughts, their real experience, their real feelings, where elsewhere they tend to be very quiet. When doctors earn money via surveys, as you might imagine, It's very much an email-driven endeavor. We send out about 25, 30 million emails annually, and we're very good at it. Last year, we completed over 712,000 surveys with doctors and other healthcare professionals. And here is some patient cases that doctors are posting, authoring on our app. And then you have doctors come in and they can then ask from certain specialties. I would like to give up to 3 specialties. But because SERMO is an open environment for all doctors, any doctor can participate and help solve a patient case. On average, we have 6 to 10 doctors weigh in on each patient case within 24 hours. So if you compare that to the offline system in a hospital network, right, trying to get 2 doctors or 3 doctors to collaborate, it often takes a lot more than 24 hours and has a lot of friction involved with it. So here we have 6 to 10 doctors, often from different countries, from different specialties, collaborating, sharing their knowledge. So this is where the mission comes into its own, right, with us improving outcomes, or like McKinsey once told us, you guys are democratizing medical knowledge, which is right in line with their worldview. So we feel like we have an important mission. We hope you guys are aligned with that, and you'll support us in the various ways that you can as we keep globalizing and getting more and more doctors to join SERMO. So now what we're here for today, all of us, drug ratings. And in the words of our Chief Marketing Officer, Osna Bencheshen, she told me a little over a year ago, Peter, your world is going to change with drug ratings. Basically, SERMO is going to go from an arguably very cool, nice, neat enterprise to something that is going to be fundamentally changing, and you're going to become part of the doctor's workflow. And she has been absolutely right. So since drug ratings was launched back in May this year, it is now a very different world we find ourselves in. So let's just sort of talk about the context or the background of why is this important and what is it really. So if you look up a professor from Harvard University, his name is Michael Luca. He has done extensive research, particularly with Yelp and TripAdvisor, on what are the commercial impacts of the world having gone social online. And to sort of really condense it down, what he's saying is that the most important commercial impact of people becoming social digitally has been the fast and furious rise of the digital reputation economy. So as a quick example, if we were to go to Memphis tonight and we were riding, and you were on your way to the airport, you would probably pick up your weapon of choice. And that could be, you click the app, Hotel Tonight, Expedia.com or Hotel.com, whatever you like to use, right? And then you simply write in Memphis. And then all the hotels comes up. And what do? Do you start looking at these things alphabetically? I don't think so. Then do you start spending time looking at the lower rated hotels? Probably not. What you do is, without even thinking about it, you discard 50 to 80% of your choice set, and you focus not just on the top rated hotel, but you focus on the top rated hotels in general. And what you're not thinking about when you're doing this, you're basically doing what our parents told us not to do. You're trusting a bunch of strangers, right? But instead of trusting one stranger, we are trusting that a group of strangers are probably right. And there's been research done on this over and over again. The law of large numbers, right? The wisdom of the crowds. They beat out the expert when the numbers get high enough. So no one would trust a hotel rating with 3 ratings on it. No, and certainly not with 1 rating. You don't know who the person is, so you can't. But if you look up, if you're on Amazon, you're looking to buy a toaster, or you are thinking about which movie to watch, or which place to order takeaway from, you trust when there's hundreds of ratings on these different places that the ratings are probably right. It's probably a good way to separate the top ones from the bottom ones. And you don't just blindly take the top one, but you only spend time looking at the top ones. So we have worked, so we did some research prior to launching drug ratings, where with almost 3,000 doctors, 2,918 to be exact. It's great being a market research company. It's great being a social network, so we have easy access to doctors. And 91%, as you might imagine, some of the time, pharma puts a certain emphasis or spin on information to put it in the best light, and that's not unique to pharma, it's unique for all of us, right? Our website looks good too, and say all the nice things about us, and just that's how the world is, right? 73%, so almost 3 out of 4 doctors believe that their peer reviews are more credible than the information they will receive from industry, right? Because from industry, we tend to get information that is put in its best light, where from peers you get it from it's more sort of the raw perception based on real world experience. Half of the doctors say they don't feel like they have all the information they would like to have before prescribing a drug. Now, and that's a general question that we ask them. Imagine if we had this question about a new drug, you would think that number was even much bigger, right? This is just about drugs in general before prescribing. So why is this going to be important for doctors? It's a new type of insight, right? It's an unprecedented window into the minds of their peers from around the world. It is, again, like in McKinsey's word, it's the democratization of data, right? It is real-world experience based on real-world patients, and it's going to be added to the manufacturer information that the industry in terms of clinical trials, your med info, your medical liaisons, and all this different stuff that we have out there, and very important information that doctors are already consuming. This is a new type of information. In the end, it's going to lead to better outcomes. There's a more holistic understanding of drugs, leads to more confidence and more informed treatment choices. And lastly, we believe it's going to help accelerate adaptation of new drugs to the extent that we can get quick feedback from doctors who are early adapters of new therapies. So, and when it comes down to it, as us all working in industry sometimes forget, but doctors are people. 77% of doctors say they already use Amazon reviews to help inform their personal buying choices. And here's an important one for all of us to sort of think through. 80% of doctors say they would trust the recommendations of a very large number of real-world doctors with product experience over the recommendations of a very small number of KOLs, academics. And this question was really, again, it was asked right before we launched drug ratings. And so back then it was hypothetical, because how would any doctor be able to get the opinion or recommendations of a very large group of real-world doctors? They wouldn't. They would be able to get it for maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4, best case, a grand round kind of thing. So it's a whole new thing we're enabling. Again, it's back to this formalizing tribal knowledge, to be able to basically get hundreds of doctors and weigh in a structured way based on a real-world experience. So indeed, we now have very large numbers of real-world doctors with product experience giving their recommendations based on how drugs perform in the real world. So I had wished I could show you a live demonstration of the system. We were not able to do that, so I apologize for only showing slides here on it. But it's great to use, and it gets addictive. You want to read all the comments and see how it keeps changing back and forth. So we work with a former chief medical officer from a top 10 pharma co. We work with our doctors on SERMO, and we work with clinical biostat professors from Harvard University via their independent consultancy, Blue Null. So Harvard is not behind this officially, but it is indeed Harvard faculty that has been helping us out with the statistical framework, which I probably should make a quick mention of. We will not display a drug's rating nor its ranking until we have enough data that we are at 95% statistical confidence that we win 1/3 of a star of its true average. So repeat that, we will not display a rating or ranking unless we have enough data points to be within 1/3 of a star of its margin of error. And of course, as more and more drugs get more and more ratings, that margin error will go down to 0.1, but therefore to do that, you need about 300-400 ratings to get to that level, which some drugs are starting to achieve. So when we rate a drug, a couple of things that sort of was fairly quick to sort of settle down and agree with doctors on was, number one, what are you rating it for, right? So we never just ask doctors to rate a drug in of itself. It is always rating a drug for a certain indication. And as we have launched drug ratings now, we are only, so far, we're only allowing doctors to rate a drug against approved indications. Now that will change in the future, and I'll get to that later. But for right now, drug ratings is 100% a drugs rating based on real-world perception, how it works for treating an approved indication. Also, we quickly felt you couldn't just give a drug an overall rating because medicine is a lot more important than takeaway food, right? Or hotels or toasters and whatnot else we use ratings for. So this was really the hardest part to really sort of decipher down what should these dimensions be, because we started a list of more than 40 different dimensions, but quickly realized you probably wouldn't get much participation for doctors if you'd be asking for 40 different data points every time, as it's a purely organic data we are collecting. So after much work with doctors and the statistical professors, we settled down on asking doctors to rate a drug's performance on a 5-star scale for treating an approved indication on 5 different dimensions. And those are efficacy, safety, tolerability, accessibility, and adherence. And those efficacy really is straightforward, right? It's effective for intended use. Safety, safe in human beings. Tolerable, low side effects. And adherence is ease of patient adherence. Accessibility is the one that's slightly convoluted, as it is a combination of ensure formulary availability in your local pharmacy, and coverage and price. So all of that sort of bunch together is accessibility. I apologize. And then we also, besides these 5 data points, we also have doctors commenting on ratings. And then when they go in and look up a drug, you can, well, let me just go back here. So we started in last June. So we started in, what is that now, 16 months ago. And we asked US doctors in secrecy to start rating drugs. And we use messaging like help build the world's first drug database by doctors for doctors, help build Wikipedia for drugs, right? And to our, it was a humbling experience to see them start rating and doing this really because they're believing they're building something for themselves, right? So from June last year to April this year, doctors gave us 180,000 ratings. And then in late April, early May, we then launched drug ratings, as you probably saw in the various press releases. And that was the first time they could start seeing the work they have been doing. And then in late May, we internationalized drug ratings. And I'm happy to share with you that today we have 455,000 ratings. And that is equates to 2.3 million primary data points of physician perceptions of a drug's performance in the real world. But not just can you look up a drug and you have the ranking of a drug based on its drug class, and you can then see how it's ranked for overall. You can see how it's ranked in terms of safety, accessibility, adherence, efficacy, and tolerability, depending on what the need of what the physician is. You can also open up the drug classes to say, no, I don't want to see the ranking just of the different drugs available in my narrow drug class. I can also open up to say, I want to see against all drugs approved to treat this indication, and then the list typically gets much longer. Another thing doctors can do, which is also just type in the diagnosis, right? Type in the condition that you are looking to treat. So, and here the numbers get really large, right? If you remember this statement over here, 80% of doctors will trust the recommendations of a very large number of real-world doctors with product experience over a very small number of KOLs academics. So when you get to this, it gets, again, humbling is a good word. We already have over 15,000 ratings for doctors' real-world perceptions for drugs performance for treating type 2 diabetes. I believe we have 7,000 or 8,000 for asthma, and I think for 6,000 for moderate pain, and so on down the list. In total, we have 3,500 drugs with over 50 ratings. We have 11 drugs with over 1,000 ratings, and we have something like, I want to say, 190, right shy of 200, with more than 100 ratings. It's a big map we're asking the doctors to fill out. So still lots to go, but it's really starting to become some very large numbers as we go through this. And here, what you see when you look up a indication, instead of showing you the drug straight up, we actually showing you the drug classes, and then we're showing you the rolled up overall rating of the drug class. And then, as you can imagine, you can then click any of these drug classes, and it opens up to the drug within that drug class, and of course, they rank from highest to lowest down on if you have overall. Or you can move this over to safety to see which drug class is rated the safest by physicians, or which one is rated with the highest adherence. And again, it's really fantastic to use and get excellent feedback from the doctors. And when doctors rate, each doctor can have what you call a reasonable use agreement, where a doctor takes that I have prescribed and are familiar with the drugs I'm rating or commenting on. Number 2, I'm not paid for nor otherwise incentivized for any of my ratings. Number 3, I understand that drug ratings is SERMO IP and is for my personal clinical consumption before they go in and start participating. We also now have in total more than 25, we almost have 26,000 drug comments. And since I became the CEO of SERMO 4.5 years ago, pharma's always sort of been asking, what are they saying about my drug? What are they saying about my competitors? Right? And the thing is, when doctors talk just in general, they talk a lot about medicine and non-medicine. They don't really talk that much about the drug themselves. But here with drug ratings, it's 100% organic UGC about the drugs, right? This is all drugs. It's 2.3 million primary data points about a drug's performance with treatment indication. It's 26,000 drug comments, right? And if you know it's about which drug it's about, you know about which indication it is about that they're treating. And we are very happy or excited to hit another important milestone this past week, which we also hope you guys saw some of the press releases. Basically, the way I think about it, we just passed our 3rd milestone. The first milestone was last June 2016, when we went to bed that night knowing that tomorrow morning doctors would start rating drugs, and you sort of hold your breath and say, will they actually do it? Will they rate the drugs? Do they care enough about each other? Do they care enough about SERMO? Will they do it? And we woke up very relieved and just really surprised with how much they were giving us, how many ratings they were adding to it. And like I said, we had 180,000 ratings from U.S. doctors from June to April before we even released it. Then the second milestone really happened in May when we released it, is will they go look? And then it says yes. And they're even looking more than their rating. So since we launched drug ratings in May, so here we are talking, 6 months kind of thing, 5-6 months, doctors have looked up a drug either by typing it in or seeing a drug in a competitor table on the homepage and clicking on it. So they have looked up a drug and gone to a drug page 320,000 times. So while we have 455,000 ratings, but again, that stems from many more months. So the lookups are going faster than the drug ratings. And this goes back to this perception. Then the third milestone, which we just hit, was we were able to now pull a list of all the doctors who have done this lookup. And we did a study with 2,000 doctors who had gone in and looked up a drug and asked them, so did it matter? What did you think? Did you trust it, right? And we were getting very pleased with the data coming back at us from these 2,000 doctors. And remember, they've only been seeing this on average, who knows, 1, 2, 3 times, right? So it's still new to them. They're still sort of learning to maneuver around it. But but 57%, little over half, said that viewing drug ratings in SERMO already changed their perception of a drug after reading the peer ratings and comments. Just like our perceptions are shaped in the consumer world by reading the comments and seeing the ratings from all the things that we consume, from food to entertainment to travel and what else out there. And 80% of them say they believe that the peer drug ratings in SERMO and comments will change the perception of a drug in the future. So how do we bridge from 57% to 80%, right? So I believe that the way to look at this is say, well, it is still new, right? So some of these people who hasn't changed the perception of the drug yet, they may not fully trust the system yet. They may not be familiar enough to maneuver around with it. Or maybe they just haven't seen anything yet that surprised them, right? So they only saw something that they thought was in line with what they already knew. So I think every day, as doctors go in there, some of the people that haven't changed the perception of a drug yet will be moving from that no category over to the yes category. So when we ask that question again, when we poll, we plan on doing this every 6 months, pulling doctors who looked up a drug to say, what have you, what do you think about the experience? And as a change of perception, we'll be going from that 57% towards the 80%, which I would expect will be the answer in about a year or 2 years from now on. 77% of doctors plan to use drug ratings when researching what drug to prescribe for a patient. So again, so now SERMO is part of the workflow of the doctor, or becoming part of the workflow, and it is going into help shaping their opinions of what is best to prescribe and researching the drug. 84% of doctors, this goes right to our mission, say that ultimately drug peer reviews from other doctors will lead to better outcomes. And so we talked about these numbers this actually updated. We also have, while the real number is 320,000 lookups, a little bit higher than that one there. And we also have a total of 2.8 million impressions, if you will, or views, where not where a doctor looked it up 2.8 million times, but where a doctor saw a drug in the competitor table, a doctor saw a drug on the home page. So if they're seeing a drug, it's ranking, it's rating, and they're seeing a comment associated with it. And this is, again, only after having launched for 6 months. So at this point, also going into China in Q1, just I'm going into India, I'm confident we'll be north of 500,000 ratings by Christmas, and probably knocking on the door of 1 million ratings by next summer. And again, lookups are going fast on the ratings. That should be north of 1 million by next summer. And I would imagine total views will be about 10 million. So this is something that really is a new voice. It's really sort of aggregating the physician voice based on that real world experience. And then you can start thinking about, because when you look at the drug, like Crestor has been rated, I think it is 400 sometimes. Those are not 400 doctors who has just prescribed Crestor once or Lipitor or what else. I mean, these are, on average, those 400 doctors, you're probably looking at 5,000 years of medical experience embedded into those numbers for Crestor and other drugs for treating hypercholesterolemia, right? And then you wonder, we don't know the answer to that, but you wonder, in those 5,000 medical years, how many patients have they seen hypercholesterolemia? Well, it's a lot, right? How many times they prescribe drugs for hypercholesterolemia? I mean, hundreds of thousands of times, not millions. So it's almost like we start thinking about, is this really real world medicine, or is it becoming real world evidence, right? Because if the numbers have become so big, and we just launched. So now I will hand it over to my esteemed colleague, JR. I'm sorry I took a little more time, JR, but I get so excited about this, as you know. It really gets to my heart to talk about how you guys, industry and ad agencies, consultants can engage the drug ratings and hopefully help you guys to get new insights, and so you can do your jobs better, help doctors and help us going on our mission of improving outcomes throughout the world. JR, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks everybody for joining. I trust many of you smart people have already been thinking through as you've heard Peter take you through the material. about how you might apply it, this unique view of the doctor's voice. And I think you also understood that kind of a first principle with SERMO is by doctors for doctors. But actually, we believe that it's also consistent with our mission to responsibly make available this doctor's voice to you folks, to other stakeholders to help improve medicine. So I'll take a few minutes and talk you through briefly and at a fairly high level about what some of our early partners and some emerging beta clients are starting to work through with the use of drug ratings information, and then also specifically about what some offerings that we've put together to make this available for you. So let me advance here. Yeah, so as you know, this is physician perception, right? So in terms of some use case ideas, tracking physician perception is certainly an application here. It's, as you've heard, a new kind of unique peer-to-peer view that can be a nice supplement to compare and contrast against your conventional trackers. We think about this as a potential leading indicator, and there's some interest in for use around launch tracking and other ways we can really tap into the early adopters and be able to get kind of their voice out and their early experience out on new products. So that's kind of an interesting option from a perception tracking perspective. And then when you think about accessing the data at a more granular level, and I'll get into some more detail about that, it can really be an add-in to enhanced commercial analytics. Think about analytics such as profiling studies of doctors, segmentation, promotion response. Again, a new data set that can be a nice enhancement there. Peter alluded to this a little bit earlier as well around social media listening, and so when you think about having a brand and treatment-specific social data, which is very difficult and typically hard to come by, and not at this point not really incorporated into analysis that would include the public social media sites, and of course we do have our SERMO Conversations offering for being able to capture all those rich comments and patient case interactions that doctors are having, and this ratings gives a really nice add-in where you get both a combination of the qualitative drug comments as well as the quantitative framework that the ratings provide. So it's a nice kind of unique add-in to enhance the social media listening projects. Targeted market research. So again, this is an example where kind of leveraging the more granular data to find out if there's certain profiles or clusters of doctors perhaps that are rating a certain way, and the ability to then go hyper-target and get to the whys, right? Get underneath why some of the ratings are the way they are. Well, it's all anonymous. SERMO, we do know the doctors, and so being able to kind of help get to, again, the whys of those ratings is something that I think can be very valuable and help target some of that follow-on primary research. Country comparisons. As Peter alluded, the platform launched outside the U.S., and ratings have been coming in on drugs outside the U.S. just here since May. But as this builds in terms of volume, it provides a nice consistent framework to look at country by country comparisons on how doctors are perceiving drugs, again with a consistent framework. And as we've moved from the 150 countries now, or 152 I guess, through the rest of the world, it could provide some interesting comparison data. So that was, again, quite high level, and I trust that as you guys are thinking through, and you've got some other ideas, and we'd be very happy, of course, to dig into detail with you on use cases. And as I said, we've got some partners that are kind of actively looking at that and kind of working through ways where it can bring value to other stakeholders. In terms of kind of putting together just some commercial offerings to make it available for you, my goal really was to provide a range of options that allow you to access the data both at a high level, very inexpensively, into more granular data, which would open up the opportunity for more of those use cases. So you see kind of the list of things here. I'll just step through again fairly briefly, so we've got time for questions, what each of these are. A brand snapshot report very simply gives you an opportunity to monitor the individual ratings and rankings of a particular brand of interest, as well as a group of competitors within the indication. So our typical kind of unit, if you will, is by indication, given that's the way that doctors rate. And so that's kind of how you can pick up a brand snapshot report. In a more detailed way, we're offering more of a full indication report. This is something that we produce on a quarterly basis for each of the indications. And in addition to getting kind of that basic rating data across the various dimensions and for the competitors, it would be the full set of drugs for the indication, as well as some of those interesting cuts. So understanding kind of how different specialties are rating the drugs and if there's unique kind of perceptions by specialty, as well as some geographic cuts, and also the doctor comments would be included in the indication report. Naturally, we've got the ability ourselves, also through agents, to filter out adverse events if that's something that's of interest, which it typically is. But these would be a really nice package report with a lot of information and various cuts of the data produced and refreshed on a quarterly basis, again by indication. In a more flexible and kind of on-demand access framework, we're standing up an online portal as well, and this allows a user to actually go in in real time and be able to basically look at the various cuts of the data and do that dynamically with a business intelligence tool. It also really adds in, I think, compared to the static reports, the ability to filter by time. So understanding maybe what the ratings were up until a certain point where perhaps there was new data came out from a study, perhaps there was some marketing activities that occurred. You can be able to do that kind of time series analysis very easily with the online portal, as well as be able to export what you see in terms of graphs and tables into something you can use internally. So a lot more flexibility there. And then as it relates to probably the most flexible, and I've alluded to it a couple of times with the use cases, is getting just exports of the data. Now, while the particular identifiers of the doctors is something we keep private for the sake of our community, you will have the rating level data accessible to you. So understanding a particular specialist in a particular state on a particular day rated a certain way, which drugs they rated, as well as comments that they included. So having that granular export really allows that, again, to be incorporated with other data assets to help enhance some of those commercial analytics. So a lot of flexibility here with the more granular data file exports. And that really covers, I guess, the base data. There's a couple other kind of adjacent opportunities that I think are important and could be useful. One is offering access to you, the manufacturers, for those in pharma, to medical information right from the brand rating page. While we certainly wouldn't allow any promotion activity on the brand page, because again, this is organic. Allowing access to a non-promotional med affairs site we think would be a very good utility, again, for our doctors to be able to kind of get additional information from the manufacturer right here. So that's something that we're going to make available to pharma clients. And then kind of playing off some of our core competence around research, which you heard. We have the ability to do super sampling and actually target ratings from a survey basis to additional doctors. So say, for example, we've got 75 ratings from rheumatologists for a particular drug of interest. If a client says, well, look, I'd love to go out and get another 75 or 100 rheumatologists to help power some analysis that I'm doing, we can actually go out, deduplicate, and through a survey basis, add more ratings in that same framework to that data set. Now, any of those ratings that we would add through a survey basis, we wouldn't include in the ratings data that the doctors see, because again, that needs to stay organic doctors not getting paid, but this is an opportunity through the super sampling, again, just to beef the data up and power analyses in a different way. And this one I alluded to actually in the targeted market research. I'm calling it in-depth insights. But this allows us, because we understand kind of which doctors rated which way, allows us to go and do research with those doctors to help give those more in-depth insights as to why the ratings were the way they were. So, for example, perhaps a brand had some low accessibility rating. We can go out and identify the doctors who rated a drug 3 and below in a particular region, for example, and ask some additional questions to help understand the whys. So that's what we're calling in-depth insights, and again, just takes advantage of our core competence on the research side. So again, a fairly quick run through, but I did it, I think, fast enough to leave 15 minutes or so for questions, and so we'll open it up at this point.
Oh, thank you, JR, and thank you, Peter. This is indeed a fascinating addition to the pantheon of real-world evidence, and it must be pretty gratifying to see the uptake among your MD users, and I would imagine potentially from the pharma industry as well. So it's now time for questions. We may also be able to get a demo going here, but if you're out there listening and you have a query or a thought, don't hesitate to send it in, and we'll ask our experts to address it. So, JR and Peter, how do you feel about taking a couple questions now, or would you rather do a demo?
Well, I'm not sure how we do the demo. I would love to do it. But why don't we go with the questions? If you can demo up, that would be great. And if not, then we will just do the questions. Sure.
Then we'll just stick with them if we can't get the demo up in time. Okay, fine. So here's one. If doctors aren't incentivized to rate, and as you pointed out, they're doing this organically, why are they rating drugs on SERMO?
It's a great question, and it's not the first time we had it. I mean, it's almost like slightly baffled, right? Why they're doing it. And it took me, frankly, several years to really understand this, and it goes back to, and I'd like to highlight again the great work of our Chief Medical Officer, Mike Oracle, Austin at Benchison, in sort of saying, look, Peter, it's because it is their space. When we did World One, it was a market research company, it was very transactional. Hey, you give me data, I'll give you $50, right? Or when they go to these different content sites, they're getting hammered with ads, everywhere, and they know there's not much affinity, not much goodwill. When they go on SERMO, while it's not like Facebook, it's the same kind of emotional connection. You're connecting with people, with peers you care about, and you're sharing your true thoughts, right? So they're doing it for them. They're not doing it for me. They're not doing it for pharma, right? They're doing it for themselves. And that really is what is so special about SERMO.
Right. And you kind of alluded to this when you said that the lookups are growing faster than the ratings, but can you just comment for a minute on what's the reaction from physicians so far about the ratings?
Yes, I think that the numbers speak for themselves, right? It's been overall very positive. We also have done a number of surveys of what can we improve, what can we do better, and they're coming with good ideas. When you sort of have to all put them in a line, like what about off-label ratings? What about medical device ratings, right? But it's really overwhelming. And the biggest thing we can all take away, guys, is we know this works in the consumer world. So, and again, doctors are people, so why wouldn't it work? They told us it would work with the stat, and they are voting with their feet, right? They keep rating. We are getting. I've never seen a week with less than 5,000 ratings. Last week we had 12,000 ratings, right? It's only going up, and we also have again the views. They keep going viewing, and now they're telling us 57%. That have seen it are saying they change the perception of the drug. It does matter, right? And this is only the beginning, folks. I mean, let's imagine what those numbers are 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now on, right?
Yeah, that's really encouraging growth there. I'm going to combine these two questions into one here. If I'm a pharma brand manager and I see a positive rating, say, on my product, is there a way to promote that to the outside world? Conversely, what can I do if there's a negative rating on a product?
That's that's a great question. I mean, so this is where, while we certainly built drug ratings and we launched it and we're very proud of it and we have our own thoughts about it, we really believe that it is pharma and their consultants, it's pharma and their very smart ad agencies that really should be thinking through this. And they can do it much better than we can, presumably. I mean, so someone has to do that kind of work, right? So if you have a brand that is rated number one overall in this category, and there's a lot of those guys. I mean, all the big pharmas, and there's lots of number one rated brands out there, right? Or you could be number one in safety, number one in adherence or efficacy, whatever it is, right? What can you do with it, right? You have to figure that out with your ad people and with your lawyers. Of what can you put it in print? What's the disclaimer? Can medical liaisons talk about it? Where are you allowed to use it? So that work really hasn't been done yet, and I really don't think we're the right people to do it. Right? We want to be the platform. We want to be like the social platform that pharma so often engage with, like Twitter and like Facebook, except from it's only doctors, right? So Mark Zuckerberg and those guys, they're not doing that work either. It is pharma and their consultants and ad agencies that's figuring out what can I do on the platform, how can I use it for the best. Now, if you don't have a very high rating in a certain dimension, and multiple dimensions, like J.I. alluded to, one way to deal with that is say, look, well, let's start by figuring out who are the doctors that are rating my drugs low on safety or tolerability, right? Are they younger doctors? Are they older doctors? Is there a regional difference? Is there a specialty difference, right? So start by the profiling that you can get if you buy access to the data, so you see the profiles of the ratings, how that break down. And then if the profile doesn't give you enough insights, you can also start, like JR said, you can say, look, we would like to interview doctors of this profile or doctors who rated my drug 3 or below or whatever it is on a certain score to get additional information. Like, did they not see that recent information you released or had they not been at a conference, whatever it is, right? You guys can think of, so we can help you, while we won't give you the identity of the doctor, we'll help you get the questions and interview in place so you can actually talk to them.
I see. So once you dig into the data, there are ways to work with that. Do you have devices as well? Sorry, go ahead.
That's a great question. So we're very happy to, I mean, this, look, we just launched in April, May, right? And we are excited. We are working with McKinsey, we're working with CS and Associates, we're working with economists, and they're all helping us sort of evolve use cases. They're helping evolve further products. And in particular, that includes medical device is coming in the works. I believe it's going to be another 6 to 8 months. The first thing that's going to happen is in Q1 of next year, we will allow doctors to rate off-label as well. So they will have off-label and on-label drug ratings, clearly highlighted, of course, when something is an off-label rating. And I think that's going to be very interesting for industry, right, to play around with that, because that's so opaque, that whole space, like how much is really being rated off-label, what are they doing, and what are they thinking about it, right? Are there some off-label therapies that are actually as highly rated as some of the on-label therapies in certain things, So that's the thing, that's really going back to the mission to help sort of creating transparency where there's no standard or it's just very opaque in a place like off-label. And then after that, we will do drug ratings. I don't think I'm allowed to say the partner we're working with, but it's a very esteemed entity, one of the most trusted in the world, that we are working on evolving medical device ratings with.
Great. How many drugs are ranked, Peter?
So 3,400, we call it ratables. So a ratable is a combination of a drug and an approved indication, right? So again, we're not just rating Crestor, we are rating Crestor for hypercholesterolemia or hypertriglyceridemia, also approved, right? So a ratable would be Crestor / hypercholesterolemia. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted here. So we have 4,500 ratables that it has enough data so we can, with 95% confidence, show its rating and say the margin error is less than 1/3 of a star, right? It's 3,500.
Got it. Great. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I should say, so in that 3,500, some of it may be the same drug that has showing up for more than one indication, right? So I don't know if the number is actually 2,000 drugs showing up as 3,500 ratables. I hope that makes sense.
Right, as the number of indications for that drug
Exactly.
change, that changes the ratables number vis-a-vis the number of actual products in there too.
Sorry,
ahead,
Mark.
JR.
This is Jared. Just to add a little bit on this one. So one thing I can provide very quickly for anyone who's interested is what I just call an indication overview. So if there's indications of interest, I can provide a report that tells you which drugs have ratings, how many ratings by specialty, how many comments are available. So it gives you just a snapshot of what's actually in there, right, relative to data for that indication. So that's readily available, and I can provide that for anyone who's interested.
Nice. And are you seeing trends relative to what kinds of drugs are receiving more reviews by therapeutic categories or, say, higher cost, perhaps?
Yeah, so what we've done, and then there's been a lot of work going into this, right? We have created what we call drug buckets. So we have done some extensive work with doctors to say each specialty, what do they indications do they normally treat, and then we are using Elsevier gold standard data in the background, which says which indication the drug is approved for. And then we link those two data sets up to create a drug bucket that says a cardiologist should have an interest in these drugs, right? It may not be true as interest in all of them, but most of them should relate to the specialty. So then we're asking doctors to rate drugs in that drug bucket. Now, if they have experience with something else outside of that drug bucket, they can certainly do that. But the vast majority of doctors tend to rate the drugs inside of the drug bucket, so to speak. So I don't know. We can say it's the more popular, so the more popular specialties, the more popular, what you call it, the more popular indications. Again, like pain, like asthma, like diabetes, breast cancer, and so forth down the line. But at this point, we have, I believe, JR, it is over 100 or 150 indications. There's more than 1,000 ratings attached to them. And again, it's just growing daily, right? So it would be the bigger, rare disease is not going to have 1,000 indications at this point, right? So it's a more common disease states. Yeah.
Right, but obviously with access amongst your dimensions that are included in the ratings, you are seeing some trends with regard to higher priced products.
We have not done. It's a good question. We have not done that work. So just going from just sort of what I would say from just sort of having I use the tool quite a bit myself is that the bigger brands tend to have more ratings presumably than the not brands, but it's certainly not true all the time. But I don't know. I wouldn't call that I wouldn't be able to stand here and say it's a trend, but it does look like from just observing it casually that may be true, but I don't know.
Okay, great. And time for a couple more here, perhaps. How long does it usually take? Yeah, go ahead.
If I can, but I'd just like to add to that, Mark, please, I'm sorry to interrupt you. For this, again, very interesting, right? What if there is some drugs out there with a very low budgets, and that doesn't have, much in terms of sort of awareness out there, and doctors are actually telling us this drug is really good, right? And it could be good overall, it could be good on some specific dimension that is important for a specific patient population. So this is the kind of awareness that, again, going back to, should lead to better outcomes. Because in drug ratings, all drugs are equal, right? It's not like because you have a bigger marketing budget, we're going to do something special for you in that sense, right? So it really is, all drugs are equal in that sense, and doctors are rating them, and as the database keep building, the better ones will flow to the top based on their real-world experience with these drugs with real patients.
Right, fascinating. How long does it usually take to get a report?
Sure, I can
That's
answer
you,
that.
JR.
So the brand snapshot we turn around in a day or two. A full indication report, if it's one that we've already produced, then that would be available immediately. But on the outside, that would be a week or so to get a full indication report produced.
Okay.
And then, of course, the online portal license would just turn straight on.
Okay. And just one more question here, if I may. Do you have a breakdown of the specialties and number of doctors within those specialties?
Sure. So I guess there's two ways to address that. I'm not exactly sure what the intent was, but in terms of kind of the overall breakdown within the SERMO platform by specialty and by country, yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of thinking about drug ratings in particular, I'll go back to that indication summary that I can provide, which would tell you within a particular indication how many ratings have been submitted by specialty. And also, something I neglected to mention before was that we also show how many views were by specialty. So remember, this is social data. It's influential, as we saw from some of the earlier research that Peter shared. So we also give you, as part of those reports, not just the rater profiles, but also who's been viewing the ratings for those drugs and that indication. Yep. Okay,
great. Well, it looks like we're out of time here, and I know that there's other questions, and some people wanted to see demos as well. I would encourage people to email us with their remaining questions. Is it safe to say, gentlemen, that you'll field the remaining questions that are in the queue one-on-one offline?
Absolutely.
Yes, we would have to do that. And I also want one thing. I guess we would be remiss if we didn't mention. So, JR, you were saying earlier, that we will allow industry, right, to have a link to their medical affairs, that info, a non-promotional on the drug page, as we will not allow promotional material on the drug page to make sure it's clean and unbiased. We do, of course, have SERMO pages where you can have a conversation with doctors and have a presence and show your information to doctors in SERMO via SERMO pages, which we've seen more people going out of.
Great. Okay, well, I want to thank you, Peter and JR, for a wonderful look into this new tool, in addition to the real-world evidence area. It was really very interesting. And I want to thank everybody out there for joining us and giving us some of your time today. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in, and we'll do our best to have our experts address them. Thank you once again. I want to thank our sponsor, SERMO, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. And I'll also like just finish off really quickly, Mark, by saying, I hope you guys out there, join us on this, you join us in delivering on our mission, to be part of what SERMO is, help improve outcomes, and which is good for all of us, right? And at the same time, you can also hopefully get better insights and be part of a conversation as we go on this exciting journey together. Thank you.
Thank you.